Hi, I'm Professor Hitch, and this is the second part of a video series that I'm doing on how to handcraft an MLA citation. When we were discussing this in the last video, I was using the Purdue OWL website, Purdue Online Writing Lab. Specifically, I was on the MLA Formatting and Style Guide page. If you're not there now, try to get there and then follow along as I explain the remaining couple points, elements for MLA 8th edition. In our last video, I covered author, title of source, container, other contributors, and version. So I'm going to scroll down a bit, get rid of that advertisements, version. Okay. So number is the next element that I would like to talk about today. Number, contrary to what you might think, is actually not referencing page number. If at any point in time you see number alone as a single word in relationship to MLA 8th edition, number is actually referring to part of a sequence. What that means very specifically is sort of like it's number one or number two of a whole list of things. And perhaps the best way to think about it would be to look at this second example here, 94 meetings, an episode on Parks and Recreation. You'll notice this was season 2, episode 21. That's a series, right? So season 2, episode 20, season 2, episode 21, episode 22. When you have a numbered sequence like episodes or volumes or numbers, you would make a note of that in the number element of MLA 8th edition. Next, you've got publisher. The publisher produces or distributes the source to the public. If there's more than one publisher and they're all relevant to your search, list them all. Most of the time, you're not going to find that to be the case though. Most of the time, you're simply going to have one publisher. It may not be obvious. If you're dealing with a book, the publisher should be on the first page or a couple of pages. If you're dealing with a website, the publisher is often either at the top of the website or at the bottom of the website. It's not really ever hidden somewhere in the middle. As you can see here, the format for publisher is very simple. You simply name the publisher: Museum of Modern Art, American College, D Productions. Note, and this is somewhat important, the publisher's name need not be included in the following sources: periodicals, works published, that is, by their author or editor, websites whose titles are the same name as their publisher, websites that make works available but do not actually publish them. Why is this important? Think about it for a minute, even consider pausing the video. Why would you not need to repeat the publisher's name? Well, I already gave it away, huh? So here's the trick. You do not have to use a publisher's name for something like a periodical because the publisher will also be the container. A New York Times article is contained in the New York Times. Who published the New York Times article? The New York Times. Works published by their author or editors. So author, that's element number one, right? Why would I need to say that again? Is sort of the point that I'm making here. That's what this rule is all about. No unnecessary repetition. Next, you should include the publication date. Please make a note here. This would be the appropriate format. You have digits for the day. You have the month spelled out but also abbreviated, and then you have the year. Notice this format's very similar to your MLA heading at the top of the page. Finally, the 9th official, boy, I hope it's 9. I guess I wasn't counting, huh? The final official element of MLA 8th edition would be location. Now, unlike number, which has to do with being part of a numbered sequence, location, interestingly, actually does have to do with page number. The reason why location is location and not page number, though, is because location can also apply to online sources. If you remember at the start of my very first video, I made the claim that once you can remember these elements, you'll be able to cite any source whatsoever. That's because these elements are universal. And they can only be universal if they're using universal words. Not all websites have page numbers, therefore, you cannot have an element that is page numbers because it will exclude those websites. So, when including page numbers, include them with the abbreviation PP and then the page or page range. When you're working with an online work, you ought to include the URL. Technically, this is an optional element to an extent, but I would say when in doubt, include the URL, especially because if you're following my advice and leaving out information that you're not sure of in other parts of the citation, you may not have a very big citation. I can tell you right now, I suppose this only applies to my classes, but I bet it applies to others. If I was ever in doubt about somebody's source and I wanted to investigate its authenticity, as long as I have that link, I'm good to go, right? So I can click on that link, I can check out the source, and if everything checks out, great. Now, if you leave out that link, that can be problematic because if I start to doubt the validity of your source and have trouble locating it, that's not ever going to work out very well. Now, there are some optional elements after location, optional in the sense that you won't always include them. Date of original publication, nope, we're going to leave that one alone for now. City of publication, same deal, leave it alone. Date of access is an interesting one though, and it's worth including. When you cite an online source, emphasis on online source, you can and really should include a date of access. A date of access would be literally the date on which you access your online source. So in the following example, I see Bernstein, Mark, which tells me Mark Bernstein is the author. I see 10 tips on writing the living web. It's in quotation marks. Those quotation marks tell me that it's small, that it's contained in something. In italics, I see a list apart for people who make websites. So whatever this thing is, it's in a much larger thing. It sounds a lot like a web article. It looks like it may have been published on August 16th, 2002. It was published online. There you go. Location, final element. It was published online. And then I have a date of access. Now, this is interesting. The reason why a date of access is important is because things on websites can change. Just imagine you start writing your essay at the beginning of February, but you don't turn it in until the end of February. It's not reasonable to go back and check your source every single day to make sure that nothing has changed, but the unfortunate reality is sometimes things do change. Putting that date of access down is like an insurance policy, because if your teacher should read your essay and say, hey, that's not right, I know that's not right, that changed. You say, hey, not up to me, I have a date of access there, it was like that on my date of access. And then you're set. As you can see, URLs are listed down here as optional, but frankly, I would really recommend that you include them. DOI is a complex term that you won't run into very frequently, and therefore, I'm going to say that is the end of our video. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to create a works cited citation from scratch. I hope that you feel like you have a better understanding of how to do that. If you don't, or you have any additional questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I may make a video in the future to address those comments. Thank you.